Teachers unions, the Democrats' biggest super PAC, spending big on Democrats with just 9 days until the midterm. The groups like the AFT and the NEA pouring millions of dollars into political campaigns between 2021 and 2022, with nearly all of it, of course, going to left-wing candidates. Here to react is Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk. Charlie, thanks for being here. You travel the country. You talk to parents, students. Is what the NEA and AFT, what the teachers unions, what they're selling in these ads, is anyone buying it after what they pulled during COVID?
No, but the enormity and the volume of resources is quite remarkable. I have to tell you, though, the NEA and the AFT, they're so worried that there is a parents' party that is growing across America, that is bipartisan, that is diverse, that is across socioeconomic lines. It is parents that are starting to show up at school board meetings. And I think what we're going to see with the midterm elections coming up just around the corner is we're going to see this hidden parent vote. It's very hard to see in the polling, but you look at the last couple of years, you look at the lockdowns, you look at the mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, the decline in math and reading scores. This is really hard to pinpoint because it's that kind of hidden suburban voter. They might not have liked Trump, but they don't like at all what's happened in their local schools, and it's the Democrats that owned all of it. I think you're going to see it materialize in the Minnesota, Michigan, and Wisconsin governor's race in particular. Those are state-based type races that were overly draconian with their lockdowns, and the NEA and the AFT are so worried that school choice pieces of legislation like we just passed here in Arizona are sweeping the country with newfound momentum.
I like the sound of that, the parents' party and a hidden vote. And if races in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan are tight, man, what an election night it's going to be. And I know things are looking up in your state of Arizona as well, with two great candidates at the top. One of which, Carrie Lake, will have on the program in just about 30 minutes. But first, Charlie, we want to get to another topic you've highlighted very well. You've got a new documentary out called Border Battle. Take a watch.
This isn't a war that anybody even wants to talk about. But we are at war.
Describe the cartel, pure evil.
It's a Turning Point USA docuseries. Charlie, tell us about it.
Yeah, from the education cartel that we were just talking about now to the drug cartel. We've been spending about 9 months on this. We're a border state here in Arizona. We make the argument that actually every single state is a border state. It's a project to educate millions of Americans about what's actually happening on the southern border. People could check it out at salemnow.com. And what we did is we embedded with Border Patrol, with ICE, with the great Sheriff Mark Lamb to educate people on the drugs, the fentanyl, the crime, the child sex trafficking, and what's happening because of a porous southern border. I think this is a major issue that people don't quite understand. They oh yeah, people are crossing it. No. This issue of sovereignty, issue of our kids, and right now across America there are kids that are taking fentanyl pills that just waltzed across the southern border because our federal government allowed it to happen. So it's salemnow.com if people want to check it out. It's making a very, very big impact, Pete. I think every American needs to properly educate themselves on the border so that we can solve this problem once and for all.
So on our first topic, it's the parents' party versus the perverts' party. And then you've got sovereignty versus anarchy. That's basically, if you want to break it down, it's a sanity election.
Choose wisely.
Choose wisely, yes, as if your life and your kids depend on it. Charlie Kirk, you're the man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now to that tragic news out of Seoul, where hundreds of people are dead after a Halloween event turned into a stampede. The death toll has now risen to over 150, and at least one American is among the dead. NBC News contributor Thomas Maresca is in Seoul, South Korea for us. Thomas, it's so hard to get our heads around this tragedy and how many people died. How are people there coping with it?
Well, I think here, too, it's just at this point still shock and disbelief and, questions of how this possibly could have happened, in this alley right nearby on a Halloween night of festivities, how so many people were killed. I think we have some video, which we should warn is disturbing. And the latest toll now is 154 dead, according to the Seoul Metropolitan Police, or around 100 30 plus injured. The U.S. Embassy here said 2 of those were Americans.
2
and
now.
several other.
Because
That's
Thomas,
the
we'd only
latest.
had 1 before starting the show, so 2 would be new news of Americans. Let me ask you, though, this area, I mean, what we can see is that where they were, it was so narrow. It looks like an alleyway between taller buildings. What is this area of Seoul? What is it known for? Is it a nightlife hotspot? It's
very much a nightlife hotspot. And right, these alleys, I mean, the main alley where most of it seems the crushing occurred is really like 10 feet wide, probably.
Wow.
But yes, this is a real nightlife spot. You know, I'm sort of standing on a main wide boulevard, but behind me in these alleys, there's just, you know, it's bar after bar after bar. And there's a hilly area, too, which I think also contributed to the way the crowds moved. And, you know, sort of there was some slipping and falling. We're still also trying to piece together what exactly happened.
Yeah.
You know, there hasn't been an official accounting yet. I mean, just, you know, reports from witnesses do talk about some people fell. There's descriptions, people falling like dominoes. But yes, this is known as a nightlife district and also as one of the most international parts of Seoul, really the most international part, where there really is a mix of foreigners, expats, visitors, and locals coming together. And it's especially popular with, you know, younger people. And Halloween has, in recent years, become a really, you know, popular event here. And this was the first time in 3 years, basically, the first time since the pandemic that large crowds gathered.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was something, I'm sure, welcome for the mostly young people that were there. And let me just give folks a sense of the response to this. I mean, there were so many people, thousands and thousands there. Speaking of thousands, 1,700 response personnel. There were 520 firefighters, 1,100 police officers, 70 government workers, and more. It was an extraordinary response, all in that small area. I mean, the trauma to that region, absolutely extraordinary and heartbreaking. Thomas Moreska, thank you so much for the report from Seoul, South Korea.
Shoulder to shoulder, front to back, just shimmying along. It really was just meant to be fun and dress up and have a good time, and it very quickly became more than that. It became an actual horror.
We want to begin, though, with new video of Speaker Pelosi just about an hour or so ago, leaving her home in San Francisco. It is unclear where she was headed to. Her husband is still hospitalized and recovering after having surgery to repair a skull fracture and serious injuries to his right arm and hands. Joining me now is NBC's Ali Rafa with more on this. Ali, I'm particularly interested on the reaction from Republican lawmakers today to the attack of Speaker Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi.
Yeah, Yasmin, it's been a mixed bag, to say the least, and it's been very interesting to see how lawmakers' reaction to this in general over the past 48 hours has evolved since this attack. First, we were seeing lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. The vast majority of them rushed to condemn this violent attack, rushed to offer their support to the Pelosi family, and now we're sort of seeing this shift in the blame game between Democrats and Republicans, both of them, as we know, victims of violent attacks impacts to them and their families personally. So now we're seeing Democrats point their fingers at Republicans for not calling out far-right conspiracy theories more forcefully, for not calling out some, at times, aggressive calls for Nancy Pelosi to step out of her position as House Speaker. Then you see this mixed bag of reaction from Republicans. Some of them are agreeing with Democrats that the rhetoric has been vitriolic, and then you see some of them saying that blaming GOP rhetoric on this, as you saw in Ronna McDaniel's bite at the top there, she's saying that that's not fair, that this suspect in this case, that his mental health is more to blame than his political beliefs for his motive in this case, which, by the way, the motive is still being investigated. But I want you to take a listen to some reaction from House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, who very well could be Pelosi's successor in this House Speaker position over the next few months, as well as Democratic Senator Chris Coons.
Violence or threat of violence has no place in our society. And what happened to Paul Pelosi is wrong. Having heard it, I reached out and called the speaker. She was on a plane back for her husband, so we were able to communicate by text. She did say that the surgery went well. I wanted to convey that our thoughts and prayers were with her and her family.
I think all of us, in the wake of this attack on Paul Pelosi, need to say that we are going to stop demonizing folks, because I think those kinds of the sort of rhetoric that we've heard in too many ways in too many places can lead to violence by a small number of Americans who think that when we describe our political opponents as our enemies, we're calling for them to be attacked.
Coons later on in that interview speaking out and calling out former President Trump for his continued silence in the aftermath of this attack on Speaker Pelosi's husband. And Yasmin, all of this is coming as we now hear reaction from the Speaker herself for the first time since Friday when she learned of this attack on her husband. She said in this letter to her House colleagues late last night that her family is, quote, heartbroken and traumatized in the wake of this, adding that her husband's condition continues to improve after that major surgery.